Welcome to Success Stories. My name is Stephen Jarrett, and of course, I am thrilled again to have not just another great guest and community member from JSC, but truly someone that I would describe as a friend. And that's not just because we share the local Charlotte area, but genuinely is someone who leans into what we believe in and the philosophy that it takes all of us working together in order for us to get through hard times in our lives. And when I was thinking about some of the conversation that I wanted to share about who Raylene is and what makes her special, I really came back to the idea of how important was what her roots were. And she was born and raised in Toronto, Canada. And I think that's so unique and that's very special. Charlotte's a melting pot. We all know that if you've ever lived in this area, but I love the fact when we get some international, of course, meetings. And we've had many folks inside of our community that are from Canada, but I think Raylene is a very unique case. So I'm excited to be able to share more about that. But what brought her down to Charlotte was she was really looking to make a change. And I think that's really important that when you're making a change, you usually have influences from other parties. And what's cool about Raylene is that change wasn't just to move this area, but it was also an adjustment in her career. And so she had to have to listen and be bold in making that change. And it was peers and mentors who really helped her. And I'll use a quote that she said, where she said they pushed and guided, which I love that visualization of someone shoving as well as like guiding you, come this way, into a world of communication, engagement, and client-facing success. So Raylene has 17 years of experience, and we're going to discuss that today inside of her success story. But Raylene, welcome. I'm excited to have you. And was there anything you would want to add to say a little bit that I touched on so far?
Yeah, no, that actually was perfect. That was a really quick snapshot. Anybody who knows me or who's worked with me knows that I come at them guns blazing, Canada first. So they know that about me. And just as a sidebar, a lot of my previous colleagues can attest to this fact. You know, I would go home. I try to go home at least once or twice a year. And I always come back with this huge bag of Canadian chocolate. And, you know, I would like dispense it out amongst my colleagues. And really, it was just my way of bribing them to get them to do stuff for me that I didn't feel like doing. But that was kind of the MO. So I am known as I'd like to think I'm known as the Canadian chocolate girl. But yeah, no, that was perfect.
That's awesome. Well, I will share this. So my family and I used to travel up to Canada, and we would go up to, and I'm going to say the name because you know what, I can do it ever want. This is my podcast, but we traveled to what's called Crotch Lake, which is actually, a lake just outside of Kingston, right?
Yes.
And our claim to fame is we bring back the cookies, which you can buy basically in any grocery store up there, but also, of course, maple syrup. But the key is not to buy the maple syrup at the duty-free shop. Store. Yeah. No, you go, there's all these local places that you buy. That's real maple syrup. And I had no idea.
It's super thick, right? Like nothing compared to what you're used to.
Yeah, none of that, you know, that the syrup that we have down here where it's full of cornstarch and all that. No, like real true maple syrup is special. So anyway, enough about that. We can talk about Canada forever, I'm sure. But so what are we going to discuss today? And what the topic of the discussion today that Raylene brings that I think is so important is how community connection and building repeatable processes are what allow you to be successful, right, Raylene? And so I am going to touch on this. What makes your story, I think, so special is it's something that many professionals will face at some point, right? I think that all of us go through transitions and we have years of stability, but at some point, unfortunately, no matter if it's 17 years like yours, there's going to be a moment when you find yourself back in the market.
Right.
And what makes your story so powerful isn't just how you navigated the search. I think that's unique and special. I can't wait to share that. But it's also how you leaned into that community conversations and, again, that repeatable kind of approach that helped you regain that confidence. But ultimately, not just land the next role, but truly find a role that is engaging, exciting. And I think that's the missing link that most people currently in the market have happened to them, where they just take the next job and they don't necessarily find the right job, right?
Correct. Absolutely. I think that's part of the whole, you know, and I think we'll talk about this later, that emotional journey that you go on in the midst of a job search, especially if it's something where your role is impacted. It's not something that you've mentally prepared for, and it's that fight or flight syndrome where it's like, I just have to land a job. And then you end up in like this sort of cyclical space where I'm in a role. Yes, I'm getting paid, and yes, I have the ability now to go in and at least take care of myself and my family. But are you happy? Are you doing what you're meant to do?
I love that. And I think the space that I want to go there with that is going back in time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So take us, kind of all of us, back to really the moment that it all happened, right? I mean, you spent
Yeah,
17 years at that
17 years.
company.
Yeah.
And I think through a lot of my Verizon friends, I think a lot of my Meta friends who've spent decade plus inside of these large corporations, built who they are, what they are. But what was it really like before that everything changed moment for you?
You know, when you're in a space for so long, as I was with my previous firm, it becomes part of your identity, right? I am this because I've been here for so long. I started in that firm in the mailroom, and over the course of time, moved up to being an assistant vice president. And when that's taken away, for lack of a better term, the first thing you start to think is, well, who am I now? What am I now? What can I do now? It's just this flurry of emotion and questions and and where do I go from here? But for me, prior to that moment, it was stability. I knew what was happening, when it was happening, how it was going to happen. And so I was able to create my life around that existence. When that existence changed, that now means the life that I've created around it is ultimately disrupted too. And I think that's one of the bigger, um, how do you say this, obstacles maybe
Yeah.
that people go through, is because they've now got to put the pieces back together without that missing centerpiece.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think back to actually Mindset Monday that we just had this week, where Michael Duncan, who's an alumni of JSC, he was sharing on there just the not just the psychology point of this, but truly the science behind this, right? And
Mm-hmm.
high professional, well executed individuals, when they go through this quote unquote trauma point, right?
Yeah.
Your brain starts to rewire itself, and it goes into
Yeah.
that fight or flight mode. And when you go to that mode of flight, it can become a habitual habit.
Right.
And if you get into the habit of putting things off because you're just scared now, intimidated, you lack that confidence. Yeah, that's so true. And I think that is the majority of job seekers find themselves at one point or another at that space, and they feel the dreaded stuck, right? So let's think about this for a second. Like, one of the things that I think really stood out about our conversation earlier, and some of me kind of reflecting back on this, was, you spoke very heavily about how the market feels different, and
Yeah.
how that correlates, right? So even to the effect of, you could say 5 years ago, but I think we were discussing 10 years ago, which is a drastic change, right? A difference of where we are. So share a little bit about that, and with the audience, and what were your evaluations of that space?
I mean, if you think about it, 10 plus years ago, you walk into a store or you call a front desk and say, hey, I saw this posting, I want to come in, and they set you up for an interview. You're walking physically into a building, you're sitting face to face with somebody, right? Fast forward to today, you're doing an interview on Zoom or WebEx, if people still use WebEx, or Teams. So right away, there's a difference. That connection, that person-to-person connection is gone because you're talking to a computer screen. One of the things that I learned, which came as a shock to me when I started my job search, was just the difference in applying. It's not a matter anymore of just mass applying to things that look of interest to you. You've now got to deal with ATS tools, making sure you have the right keywords so that this tool can parse your resume out of this massive pool and put it in front of human eyes. You're not using the same resume across the board. You've now got to tailor every specific resume to that role. And so now, there was always the saying, but right now I think it's absolutely true that finding a job is a job. I was clocking a good 8, 9 hours a day, putting in work, changing my resume, finding people that worked at the firm that I was interested in, connecting with them. I mean, we have to also include the networking component into it as well. I read a research a little while ago that says about 80% of jobs are not landed due to application. They're landed due to networking. That's vastly different than when I got here and I was applying, because I didn't know anybody. I just applied. And so when you're thinking about all of these things coming down on somebody whose job has been impacted, who's maybe not been networking while they were employed, they've now got to build a network. They've got to build a name for themselves. They've got to build a presence, and they've got to do all of that while they're actively seeking something. That is, in a way, a level of trauma, because that's stressful. It's such a change to what they may have considered the norm if they were in a role as long as I was. It's like drinking out of a fire hose. Everything is coming at you at once.
Yeah, and I think what I love about what you're saying, and this has been the key component of kind of the structure, right? And inside the community, you know, you have the mindset for Mindset Mondays, and the reason why you start there is because you have the dreaded Sundays, right? It's never an Exit Mondays problem. It's actually Sunday's problem. That stress level, that uneasiness of what's going to happen next, or even as a job seeker when you're brand new, it's the what do I do with my hands moment, where
yes,
you just wake up, all of a sudden your computer's gone, there's no access, you don't have a conference call, there's nothing for you to do, and you can only do so much laundry before you're out of things to do at your house, right?
Yeah.
So you can't keep yourself busy, and that's where a system comes into place. And I think what you're describing there about ATS and the filtering systems and utilizing the digital side of things, there is a way to build a proper structure. And I think what truly I want to ask you is, you know, what really felt, let's call it the most unfair at first as you entered this market after 10 years?
I think for me, in my opinion, what I felt was the most unfair was the act of applying, right? I felt like in my head, the way that my brain was working was I was being counted out before I was even being remotely considered. Again, this falls back onto the, utilizing ATS systems. I would literally send an application that I had spent possibly an hour or two working on, and as if I hit send, I automatically got an auto reply. And it does something to a person, no matter how confident, how strong, how sure you are of yourself and your skill set and your experiences. You get enough of those, and it does start to chip away at who you are as a person, who you think, or what you think about yourself. There were many moments where I started to question the value of Raylene. Was the last 17 years that I spent working and building all of this insight, all of this knowledge, all of this, was that for naught? And it becomes a depression. It hangs over you because regardless of what's happening, you have to do it again. You have to put yourself up against more rejection. I understand the premise of using these tools. I can't imagine the amount of applications and resumes that a recruiter would get in a day and having to go through that. But on the flip side, as the person seeking a job, especially that person who's, doing this not of something that they've decided, it's very crushing. And I wish there was a way that impact wasn't so felt.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the vision, right, of what, and I think we'll touch on this in a little bit. You can't, the current existence in the current system that's in place, you can't solve that through a LinkedIn. You can't solve that through necessarily just tips and tricks, right? It really does take that consistency of a community.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I know that's one of the premises you want to share. So I'm not going to take away your thunder. I'm going to put a pin in that. I'm going to pin in that really, and we'll come back. But I just think that moment's so important, because when I'm hearing you talk, you feel that fish out of water moment, or even as if, and I thought this was such a great way this was placed actually by one of our other success stories before, that it was like learning a new language.
Yes.
And when I think of that, I man, that resonates with me. And I think about a couple of times that when we did travel up to Canada, we traveled into Quebec, right? And it's a whole
Mhm.
new world. You're not speaking English
Entirely.
anymore, like you're speaking French. And or even when I go down and I visit my partner, Tina, down in Miami, like that, you're not speaking English all over Miami. That's the secondary language in Miami, right? And I think there's something to that when you feel that out of sorts moment, and you're learning all of the everything you thought you knew is different.
It's gone. Now flip that and think about being the person who knew everything, being
Yeah.
the
Oh,
person
100%.
who others came to for help or for guidance or support. And now you're on the other side of the table. And that is such a jarring experience because you've never been there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's where you start to fight within yourself internally because, and that's one thing that I went through. I always knew how to do things. I always knew who to go to. I always knew how to get in front of. I don't have that anymore. What do I do?
Yeah, I think the emotional side is what people miss. I really do. I think that is something that is the largest side. They miss the roller coaster ride of the emotions. And we were talking today on our open office hours in the community, and one of the pieces that we really were talking about was that constant flywheel that you have to be on, where
Yeah.
it's a rinse, wash, repeat. We call it the momentum loop. But I think that's a really great piece that you're discussing. And so, what for you, what were some of the harder moments that you experienced during the search? I know we're kind of touching on some, but go deeper a little for me there if you don't care.
Um, so definitely it was, what we've talked about before, ATS, recreating my resume. I think the hardest part, one of the harder parts for me in my search was the disconnect. I didn't know anything. So now I had to reconnect myself. Um, the companionship of having colleagues that I could bounce ideas off of, and you need somebody in your corner in that space when you are in a completely, I'm going to call it a new adventure, a new journey. And that's where JSC came in, just perfectly. It was a perfect moment for me. I was able to connect with others who were in my same space. We were able to have conversations on a professional and a personal level. It wasn't just about, hey, does anybody know of a role or this is what I've done? But we were able to talk about things like how we were feeling and how we were navigating through those feelings and what we were doing to kind of mitigate any of the depression or the sadness or the what ifs that came through. And for me, that was really critical. I didn't realize how much I needed that support until I got to that moment because I've always been able to surround myself with people. One thing you brought up earlier was like you can only do so much laundry in the day. And when you are working, sometimes 8 hours just flies right by. But when you're not, those are the longest seconds and minutes you will ever experience. And so having a team behind you, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, whether it's a new community you've joined, I think is a huge part of this journey that a lot of people don't take advantage of.
Yeah, no, and I'm gonna kind of let that sit for a minute because I want everyone, all the listeners, to really understand that everything you just described, I have this conversation weekly with
Mhm.
it, not just in the community, but everyone that's outside the community that will soon join the community. Um, Man, that's every job seeker feels that at
Mhm.
some point, whether it's early, middle, or late. They have to sit in that space, and you have to be uncomfortable.
Very.
And I say this in a positive way. We talk a lot about it on Mindset Monday, but the idea, this is the best opportunity to suffer.
Yeah.
Because if you can build the right habits now and the right pieces, that suffering will lead to great successes and a growth of you as a human. And I think that's really where I want us to go, because the truth of the matter is this was hard. This was hard on you. It's hard on everyone who's a job seeker. But at some point in this magical, suffering, hard time of our lives, this negative season, if you will, at some point during that search, the light bulb goes off,
Mhm.
and something really powerful starts to emerge, right? And you mentioned it about finding the community, and you start to realize that you don't have to navigate it alone. So inside of that, I want you to go just a step deeper into that community living, and what really helped you discover that.
Uh, I think, and this is going to sound crazy, but I'm sure a lot of people have at least had this thought is, when you're in this space, it becomes it's me against the world sort of sentiment, right? The the feelings come in of why me? What am I going to do? Why me and not them? And in joining the community, one thing that I realized that was really powerful is that I didn't have to navigate it alone. And that for me was a very big struggle, realizing and accepting, that there are others out there who are either in the same position that I'm in or have been, and then taking in from them. So we have shared experiences, we have encouragement, we have the ability to help others. I'm not in a position to help anybody find a job, but I'm able to help somebody search for a job, right? And I really think for me, the thing that I got the most out of JSC was just the conversations. I like to talk. Um, and so just logging in, connecting with everybody, and just being a sounding board sometimes was enough for me. I didn't have to even say anything. And I loved that experience because it brought my fight all the way down. And it felt like a level of encouragement where I could go in and now tackle what was in front of me. It was really impactful, and it's not something that you necessarily think is going to do anything for you. Sometimes you're going to go into this, oh, it's just another job board, oh, it's just going to be another bunch of people, complaining and moaning. I didn't have that experience. I had the ability to outline what I was feeling, my gripes, my concerns, but also my encouragement and my thought of, hey, this is going to be a new chapter for me. And it's going to be rough, but I've got my team behind me and they pushed me every step of the way.
That's so awesome. And what I hear, and then you tell me if I'm misunderstanding you right now, and you can just wrangle me back, right? But it's the power of human connection.
Absolutely.
Particularly in a cold existing market.
Absolutely.
And I when I think through the conversations that I'm so blessed to get to have, it's moments like this, because if you're job seeking, you feel the coldness, the ghosting, you feel the lack of communication. And I think what you said was so true. When the community does, it wraps around you, and it's not that it saves you, right? You got to save yourself, you got to do everything, but the community supports you. And
exactly.
I think of Mel Robbins, who's one of my favorite individuals in the whole wide world. But one of the things that she says is, basically, no one's there. You have to save yourself.
Mm-hmm.
No one's coming to save you, but everyone can support you.
Absolutely.
And I think in a very cold world where we live at these screens and we're staring at these screens all the time, it is not very warm and human. If we can find a way to do that, and I think that's what I wish I could take all the credit for that, but it's really the people here. It's you, it's others that make this so special. And I think that's the exciting part, is that this ever growing at 380 whatever people, I think it's because it grows every day. I think another person just popped in, that's what that ding just came through. So it's wild to see the growth that's happening because of people like you leaning back in that are sharing not only their stories but helping others. And so when I think through that human connection moment and that power of that, right? How did those conversations help you stay motivated and really elevate you through the process? Because a lot of people would say, well, that's great, you had some talks with some people, but what did it spell that out for everybody so they could understand your blueprint of success?
It was the encouragement I couldn't give myself. I fell so deep into the questioning of who Raylene is. Mm-hmm. The loss of confidence. It wasn't a lack, it was a loss of confidence. Having those human connections, right? And we spoke about this earlier. Even though I'm still typing into Discord, I'm still talking into an online community, I know there's a real person there who's learned my name, who's learned my story. It's having those people jump up and say, we're not going to let you think that way about yourself. We don't think that way about you, right? I'm fortunate that I did have a community outside of Discord as well. And so I had those people checking in with me. I had those people sending me text messages, emails, Raylene, look at this, Raylene, look at this. And so what that did for me was like, well, shoot, if I don't care about myself, all of these other people do. and I'm not going to let all of these people care about me in a waste. That really does something for who you are as a person when you are in this sort of a situation. Is just knowing it's like, if I fall, it's like, think the trust fall, right? I fall. There are people there that are going to catch me, not because they have to, but because they know Raylene, they believe in her, and they know she's going to bounce back. And so this little rough patch she's going through where she's unsure, we're going to make sure she doesn't live in that space and is going to come back better and stronger than ever. And I can't stress to you how much this experience that I went through made me realize how important relationship building is, and keeping those connections, not just to receive, but in turn to be able to give back, because somebody else is going to need that. And I think within the last, I want to say, week, I've had people that have seen me on LinkedIn, and have come to me and they've just said, hey, I just got laid off. How did you do it? And I stop everything. This is what I did, because somebody did that for me.
I love that. And I'm going to go a step into this, because you touched on something that is so important. You talked about really the transition from the emotions to practical work.
Yes.
And how the community kind of helped you find that. And in the same way, and I want to say this very clearly, because I know a lot of people will misinterpret this, but your emotions are so important. Like it's really, a lot of people say, oh, barrier. No. Lean into your emotions. Now, you can't allow your emotions to be facts, because they're not, but emotions can lead you to facts. And so even though your emotions might have been telling you that Raylene is not adequate, Raylene's not this, she's not what she used to be, you have to be able to say, okay, wait a minute, where is this coming from? Where are these emotions driven from? And then from those emotions, that's the pause. You need the pause. They're triggering something. So take your deep breath, pause, and then think about where it traces back. Well, wait a minute. If I don't think I'm worth anything, like you did, well, but why is everyone trying to help me? Why would anyone, if I don't see value in myself, that doesn't make any sense, because everybody else is seeing. That's the fact. So the value is the fact. Then you go, oh, the emotion's not really true at this moment, right? That's not a real, that's just, it's thank you emotion to get me to pause, but that's not real.
It absolutely is. Like, I mean, by nature, we are emotional beings, right? And our emotions function very well, I believe, individually. But when they start tumbling on top of each other, it just created absolute chaos for me. And so, again, having those people, having that community that's kind of helping you iron out, like, hey, you're just feeling this because the one thing I didn't do, Stephen, is experience the emotions and then rationalize them. I just lived in the emotions. And so without justifying to myself why I'm feeling a certain way, I'm now continuing on a path of just feeling this certain way. And I've had people that I've worked with for years, like these are my people now, whether they like it or not, they're my people, yell at me and ask me, what are you doing? What are you doing? This is not Raylene. Like, I don't know you. And after I stopped laughing, I was like, yeah, you're kind of right. I just feel a way. And the one thing I remember being told is, go ahead and feel it. Now get out of it. And I think that's where people get stuck. It's hard to make sense of who you are as a person when you go through something so impactful so quickly with no preparation, right? Now you got to put everything back together. But having those around you that can step in and fill the space when you maybe can't at the moment, chef's kiss. It's everything you would need, in my opinion. It helped me in ways that I can't even begin to put together.
Yeah, and I'll lean back. I keep using this word. I'm going to keep playing with it, though. Is, it's really powerful when you use the people truly in a positive way and allow them the opportunity to help you. And that is this concept. As a job seeker, we get confused, where we feel as if we are being selfish all the time by asking for help.
Yes. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. I am I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. I will figure it out. And now I've got to extend a hand and say, I need your help. And that is not the image I ever presented of myself, I don't think, at work or in my personal life or even socially. I created the independent, I'll get it done persona. I can't get it done now. And I need your help. And I absolutely hated it. So now we've got, the emotion of pride coming into play. And one of the places you really can't be too prideful, right? That is such a perfect segue. I love that, because that that was me.
Yeah, and I'll share this too, because I know we've had this discussion that I want to flip this on its head for the viewers for just a second. Is I also know you're an incredible giving person, and that's where we're going to go in a second. We're going to talk about what you're all the things you're doing to pay it forward, right? But I want to give this backdrop, because what we're discussing is a very wonderful concept that is called value creation. And so when you are a selfless person, which I know you are, and that's the reason why you do it yourself, you don't want to burden others. And one of the reasons, and I want to share this for everyone, when you are when you're truly a selfless person, one of the things, and I'll ask you live, right, on this recording, you enjoy helping people, right?
I do.
Yeah. And what happens when you help people?
I get a sense of gratitude. Yeah, I do. And I feel good about myself. I feel like I've done something to support the growth of somebody else.
And what's amazing, but there's science behind this too, right? And the fun part about the science is this: it's just like scrolling on your phone, reel after reel, that dopamine hit, that's the same thing. So those of us who are just those constant servant leaders, those that pour into others, we do this because we're selfless people. But I'm going to flip it on its head. It's actually a selfish act, because you're going to get the dopamine, right? So all of us that are so uncomfortable with asking for help, I challenge you to think of it this way. If you are thinking you're being selfless by not asking for help, I tell you you're being selfish because you're denying someone else the right to get the dopamine hit of helping you.
Right. Fair. Not an easy pill to swallow, but fair.
So before we do that, because I know this is something that you obviously did extremely well, right? You owned this process of that switch of a role, right? Well, you have spent time volunteering and helping others practice interviews. What did teaching others really even lean in and teach you about your own journey?
Well, it was definitely a learning experience on both ends, right? In order to guide somebody else, I had to make sure that I was giving actual true factual information. And so it helped with the lag. It helped with the, what do I do with my day? But it also made me, it just really boiled down to, volunteer opportunity was presented to me. I volunteered with Goodwill, helping folks learn how to interview, what to say, how to dress, and how to express themselves in an interview. We talked about before, an interviewer, one of the first questions, so tell me about yourself. And people start going on a tangent about their dog and their ski trip and all. And I'm like, that's not what they're asking you. And some people genuinely did not know that. They did not understand that. And so it's helping them understand the question behind the question. And it gave me a sense of they get it. It's that moment when you see that light bulb go off and they get it. And it was the same premise that I felt in my previous role when I was working with financial advisors. I was training an advisor on how to learn new systems, how to learn new cultures, etc. And you see that, I get it. That's what you're aiming for. That's what I'm aiming for. You have now given somebody the tools that they need to succeed in their future, and you can safely walk away. And I did that volunteering for interviewing, I think for about 5 years. And it just never stopped surprising me how much people don't know about the interview process, what an employer is looking for and what they're asking you. And so just being able to give them that, I walked away from it feeling good every time.
Man, that's so good. And I want to lean into that space for a moment with you, because there's a lot of times that we get stuck in feeling bad about our environment. And I can't encourage everybody enough to think of this truly as an educational journey for yourself, and everything that you're learning can be so valuable to the next person. And if you do lean into that space and you educate yourself and then help others, I promise you it pays itself forward over and over again. You will reap the benefits of that for the rest of your life.
Right.
I mean, this whole world that has been created here at JSC is because of that, right? It's because of me going, well, wait a minute here, I am laid off. The process I thought was going to work didn't work. And I said, well, I'll tear this thing apart. And what I thought I was doing and building as just a fun thing to do on the side to help some friends and family has now turned into this glorious community that we have. And it's amazing then to see people like you, Raylene, and others that now lean back in and then help and assist inside the community and outside the community to help people navigate one of the hardest times of their life. And I think that's just so special. So tip of the cap to you. Thank you for everything that you do. I think it's just great. So, all right. So I want to really think about reflection. We teach this a lot, right? Reflection is so key. We want to reflect back. And then of course, from that reflection, we discover what we've learned, and then we go and execute inside of that, right? So in this case, what I want to do is I want us to look back, right? And I want to get a little broad, and then we're going to drill in, right? And I want to think through, what did this entire experience really teach you about yourself?
First thing, I still kind of laugh about it, is I apparently don't view myself the way others around me do. And that is something that absolutely has to change. There's an ability to be confident without being cocky. And I lived in a bit of a self-depreciating, too humble environment, which I think derailed my success earlier on. I think one of the things when I think about this entire space and everything that I've gone through, being unemployed, experiencing something new after so long, is I needed to figure out, and now that I had the time, I needed to figure out not just who Raylene was, but what can she truly do? What is it? And we're not thinking just, a role, right? We're not thinking just a title, but what do I want to do? Something that's naturally, and I think that's one thing that job seekers really need to put some time into, is what do you want to do? Here's an opportunity to learn new hobbies, venture into new spaces. That I didn't do. It was head first in job search.
Got it.
I reflected definitely on questioning myself, and that kind of circles back into how others viewed me versus how I viewed myself. Why did I question myself? What was it about me that I felt I wasn't good enough, despite the rejections and the things that were occurring? What was it about me that I didn't think? It's a lot of who am I and what can I do going forward to change my dynamic? That is such an open question. Like, I think I could talk about that for a good hour in terms of reflection, because so much goes through your mind. And now that I am gainfully employed, grateful, thankful, appreciative, I'm still not willing to let go of the emotions that I felt back then. One, because it's going to help me help somebody else, but it's also going to help me appreciate this new space that I'm in.
Yes. And I think what I love is when you go through suffering and hard times and you have growth, the impact that it makes on everybody else in such a positive way. Right. And so I'm gonna go here and then we'll kind of wrap. But if someone's listening right now and maybe they just got laid off, or maybe they know it's coming, and I'll even go as far as to say maybe they're just in a really bad environment, maybe it's toxic, and they're looking to make a change, right? What would you want them to hear, and what would be that advice for them to do next?
The current job market is tough. It's, I think, tougher than we've seen in years. But I would want people to know it's about refining their narrative, right? Again, you're going to question yourself at times. It's going to happen and it's normal. But I want people to understand, I would hope for people to understand that, if you stay disciplined, you seek clarity, i.e., your network, your people, and you absolutely remain aligned with your standards, that opportunity will come.
Mm.
It will come. It's going to feel like this is never going to happen. It will come. The one thing I would stress, which I was guilty of, is absolutely not to just mass apply, but find that role that speaks to you. Stay in motion and recognize that even the smaller steps matter. And that could be something as just getting out of bed in the morning and logging in.
Yeah, it's that 1% movement, right? That
Yep,
1%.
absolutely.
Movement. Yeah. And so as I wrap us here and close this up, and thank you so much, not just Raylene for the beautiful words and sharing and being kind with your time. And again, there's, you do this voluntarily. This is nothing else, right? But what I think matters is if anyone who is out there that is a job seeker, they need to understand the fact that, your story reminds that job seeking can feel very isolating.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be that way. And I say this every time on Success Stories, whether you joined JSC, which I'm a little bit of a proponent of, or just find a community. Because just like Raylene, she had multiple sources of community for herself. And I would recommend that to everyone.
Yes.
It's important that you surround yourself with people who are going to help you and remind you of the value that you already have and the value that you're building towards.
Correct.
We're never staying still. We're always in motion. And the key to that would be, if you're a job seeker, you need a system. I can't stress that enough to yourself. You need a system in your emotions. You need a system inside of your job search. You need a system in how you build out and actually go through this process for yourself. You need clearly defined objectives for yourself, not just daily, but you need that so that you can find your wins.
Right.
A misconception is that a win is getting a job. Nope. That's the final outcome. There's so many minor wins along the way that you have to do. And talking about you retooling your process and relearning after a decade plus of not being in the market, I think that's the key that everyone needs to remember. Your 1%, your win for that day might be getting out of bed, firing your computer up and sending one message. And that's okay. Make that be your win. But if you do that every single day, you will compound upon itself. And at some point, you'll realize you're sending 20 or 30 messages in a day. You've got 3 interviews you're preparing for, and you're helping other people on the backside. And all of a sudden, you're going, whoa, how did I get here? The dominoes fell over quick, right?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just retooling that, like muscle memory. Now you just have to create an entirely new regimen. And I think that's where people get stuck. We get stuck in our ways, and it's breaking from the norm. But like you said, the job is the outcome. It's the process of re-envisioning and reimagining who you are and presenting that to people, because you have value. You have value, you have worth, you have skills, and you have experience. You're just now showcasing it to a newer world.
100%. And I'll say this last piece here. If you're wondering what that structure should look like for you as a job seeker, I'll share the one that we teach, which is very simple. It's in 3 steps. You have to understand your marketing materials, and that is your resume, that is your outreach, that is your letters, anything that you think about that is displaying your strengths and your talents out into the world. From there, you understand and start to build out that. Then you go test that through your networking. Networking is not just asking for a job and getting referrals. No, it's much more strategic than that. We break it down into, again, 3 pieces: warm, cold, and blind. You want to have all 3 of those pieces working for yourself, because that helps teach you, and you learn along the way how to make your marketing materials much more valuable.
Right.
And then from there, you end up in interviews. And from interviews, you end up then learning new aspects of this process for yourself, right? And that interviews then, of course, will lead you back into marketing materials, networking more properly and much more efficiently, and then getting further along in the interviews. And last and finally, it's the negotiation process. And if you envision this as a nice loop, we call it the momentum loop in our world. But if you don't have that or a vision on how to create that, please come join us. That is what this is all about. And it's about helping you, being a part of that. And Raylene, thank you so much for sharing your experience inside of this crazy world that is the current job market.
Yeah.
And I got to thank you for just being a moment of peace. I think you bring calmness, you bring structure, and your superpowers radiate through that as who you are, as not just a human, but also as an highly intellectual professional that helps people around them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm happy to do this. I'm happy to do it again. I'm sure there are a lot of people that just need to hear this conversation from somebody who's done it and been through it.
That is so key. So thank you again, Raylene, and everybody else. I just want to say thank you for joining us. If you want to find Raylene, you can find her obviously on LinkedIn. I will post, of course, her LinkedIn there. Go check, follow her. She does some incredible writing actually as well. She's quite the writer. So definitely check out some of the things that Raylene puts out there. But of course, if you're interested in JSC, follow the links below. You'll find us. You'll be a part of our world. I would look forward to not just getting to know you and becoming, of course, a good friend, but obviously have the opportunity to be able to see you have the same successes that Raylene and so many others have had. So thank you guys. Appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.